What's on the minds of CPA Society CEOs? This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hi, I'm Don Meyer, Chief Marketing Officer at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. The NJCPA welcomed Aisha Johnson as our new CEO in June 2023. She joined on the heels of two other state CPA societies welcoming new CEOs. Calvin Harris became CEO of the New York State Society of CPAs in June 2022, and Jeff Brown became CEO of the Illinois CPA Society in December 2022. While AJ, Calvin, and Jeff came to their positions with varied backgrounds, they are facing the common challenge of leading three of the largest state CPA societies amid a decline in people pursuing the profession. The trio was recently interviewed by Dan Hood for On the Air, a podcast by Accounting Today. We're going to share some clips of that discussion with you. Dan started by asking AJ, Calvin, and Jeff the biggest issues facing their members. Here's what they had to say.
The biggest issue at the moment is the pipeline challenge. So we are all concerned about, ensuring that we have the talent in the pipeline, because we know that that's an issue. And as people are retiring, right, we want to make sure that we are able to keep that pipeline strong for the future of the profession. So that's a big one.
Yeah, I have to, reiterate what AJ just said, and I think the pipeline, pretty much on all levels, not just those entering, but those in the middle of their career, and the entire pipe, so to speak. Just making sure we have enough people and that the profession is relevant to everyone in it.
We've been spending a lot of time on talent acquisition, but we're also focusing on the retention piece because we think that the retention aspect is definitely a huge contributor to what we're feeling from a talent perspective, and it's going to be the next frontier. But then, I'd also add just grappling with new services and an evolving business model. I mean, if you pull out a little bit, you'll see that firms are not dealing with the same business issues that they were dealing with 2 years ago, and they're all taking an eye to the future to figure out how to structure themselves and be able to focus on the needs of their current and future clients.
I would just add to that also, we talk a lot about digital transformation. So, conversations are being had around AI, artificial intelligence, and we're looking at this. I know firms are paying attention to it, and I think everybody in the profession should be thinking about it from conversations within education and how you leverage AI to, using it in your firms. And I don't see it necessarily replacing people, but I think that as we think about these new models, everyone needs to pay attention to the implications of AI, how it's being used. So definitely, I would add that.
No surprise that all three CEOs agreed that the pipeline, specifically recruiting and retaining professionals, is the biggest challenge for members. Next, Dan asked Calvin, Jeff, and AJ to share how that challenge is being addressed by each of their CPA societies.
There are a few things that we're looking at here in New York State. Part of it is really leaning heavily into our younger members. We have an area what we'll consider 40 and under, our next gen, and really leaning into that group a little bit more, trying to make sure we're finding ways for them to be engaged, not just member in name only, but be engaged, and even further going back to find more creative ways of connecting with our students. Membership with the New York State Society for Students is complimentary, but we want to make sure that there's actually something that's going to hold them in beyond a free membership. So we're really thinking through ways of doing that. And even going further back than that, we have our high school awareness program co-op, which we've had for years to expose students to the accounting profession. A case can be made that high school is not early enough. I certainly was exposed to accounting much earlier than that, but I had a mother who was a bookkeeping teacher, so I had a little advantage there. But I think all along the way, it's really never too early to start to get people engaged, and we're looking at all along that continuum here in New York.
exposure in the womb is what effectively we're looking at. It is whatever it works, right? But it is interesting how often you hear accountants say, I had a relative, my mother, my father, an uncle, the guy next door kind of thing, and how often that's a huge role in bringing people into the profession. Jeff, in Illinois, what are you looking at in terms of solving the pipeline problem? I know the society has done a ton of research in the area. How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, we're definitely doubling down on some of our research. So we are in the process of reissuing our Decoding the Decline study that was first went out in 2019, 2020. And then also we have a study in the field around retention. So those are two big pieces of pipeline that we're researching. But then to Calvin's point, just more outreach to raise awareness. We can't keep going back to the traditional channels, or traditional high schools, or traditional academic partners and expecting a different result. So that's one of the things that we're doing to broaden our perspective. Definitely exploring with all of our stakeholders just alternative pathways to entering the profession, eventually getting licensed. It's interesting that everybody has a stake in the ground in terms of what they want to come out of this pipeline dialogue. And now we're trying to arm them with the tools to, here's what you should be doing. Here's how you can contribute to help us address these issues. It's not just the responsibility of the Illinois CPA Society. I think it's an entire continuum. It's the society, it's the firms, it's individual CPA professionals, the academic community. But then, talking about what Calvin was talking about with high schools, we need to go to non-traditional high schools. We can't just go to the schools with the highest graduation rates. We did a program with CAQ a few months ago. We went to a high school in the south side of Chicago, 98% African American, 1% Latinx. These are kids that, their parents weren't CPAs, their parents don't work with CPAs. So being able to show them examples of professionals in the field is just really helpful. So just raising that awareness is going to be key for us.
All right. AJ, how about you? In New Jersey, how are you guys approaching the pipeline? How are you thinking about it?
Sure. I would also add to what Jeff said and Calvin, we have to create awareness. We obviously know that retention is an issue and it all has to come together. So I see it as, the state societies doing their part, but then also we know that AICPA has a task force here in New Jersey. We have a pipeline task force at the state society, and it's made up of a diverse set of professionals, including some of our emerging leaders. And so that group will be developing a plan and making recommendations towards a plan, I should say, for the board for our board of trustees to consider in December. So we feel that it's important to act now to think about high school and college strategies, as well as any other opportunities for awareness, and also looking at firms and our educators and how they can play a role in all of this, in addition to all of our members, right? So we have an engaged membership, and I think our members are really great and they want to help. And every day that I'm talking to our members, they're saying, what can we do? So I know as a society, we're looking at, just the best ways to help members tell their story as well, because we know that not everyone will, especially, the African-American students, Latinx, and the Asian younger students as well, like all of that matters. And so CAQ, that's been their focus, right, is on really those populations of demographics. And we know that mentorship plays a role. And if you don't see teachers who can talk to you about accounting, you don't have role models and all of that. So there's a lot of work to be done when you think about the entire pipeline from early on to, retirement and actually obtaining your CPA license and then keeping folks in the profession.
Jeff hit the nail on the head when he said that a profession-wide multi-stakeholder effort is needed. In other words, there's no magic formula that will solve this puzzle. Since it will require a team effort to address the pipeline issue, Dan asked Jeff, AJ, and Calvin what members and firms can do to help.
I think there's a few things that our members can do, Dan. One, just helping us to amplify the messages in a community. If you think back, and I was in a small town a few weeks ago, walking down the street, there was the lawyer, there was a CPA's office, there was an undertaker. But that doesn't necessarily take place everywhere. So we need them to be representatives of the professions in their local communities, talking about the range of opportunities that are available to CPAs. That was one thing that stood out to me when we went down to that high school on the South Side, was the fact that, these were young people who may have had an impression of what CPAs do, but when we showed them 4 different examples of the different pathways that people have taken, I think it really opened their eyes. So that's one. I think that members can take stock of their own work environments and think about some of the things that young people are saying to us that are deterrents to them pursuing careers in accounting, and figure out ways that they can address those things. So I mean, Calvin mentioned the relevancy of the work. That's one piece. The attractiveness, addressing some of the badge of honor from my busy seasons. Those are the types of things that really are starting to resonate with young people as they're making career choices. So I look at those as things that members can actually control. They can also assist by, sponsoring young people. They can serve as a mentor. They can serve as a donor and, help us to create scholarship programs, because we know that there are barriers to entry related to finances that young people are experiencing. And, we can solve some of those through our own efforts. But that's a direct example of members being able to help us to make a difference. We're starting a dialogue here in Illinois of what if the CPA Endowment Fund of Illinois created the conditions where every young person who applied for a CPA exam award scholarship from us received it. Right now we're turning away half of our applicants just because we don't have the availability of funds.
That'll be it. I mean, it's one of those things where you start to realize, well, in some cases, there's an actual application of money might solve this. And who has more money than accounts, or at least who knows where it is, or an account. AJ, you had, as I said, you had mentioned, things for your members to do. What are some of the things you think they can, ways they can help?
I definitely agree with Jeff. We need to amplify the brand. And I think our members, they're working, they're in the profession, they're passionate about it. So I think they can easily tell the stories of what they're doing to help companies and their clients, whether they're in public accounting or corporate accounting and finance, just the impact of their work. So I think that's really important. I think it's there are lots of opportunities for members to just participate in their local communities, right? So if you have an office and you're a small firm, you're not too small to go out there and, be a part of a program and share your story with high school students and things like that. Also, for the larger firms who, they may have more access to resources, I see opportunities to really develop their talent. The emerging leaders, as an example, getting them involved in NJCPA, as well as giving them opportunities to be fresh faces, go back to their high schools, share their stories, make those connections and encourage that so that CPAs are seen throughout the community. When it comes to government, I think that we can all be involved, right? So whether it's being a part of a workforce initiative or joining state boards, just thinking about ways in which you can impact local government and keep the issues front and center around STEM and accounting and education, I think also is a way that we can do it, not to mention our educators.
Excellent. All right. Calvin, thoughts on this, on what individual accountants and individual firms can be doing to ease the pipeline?
Sure. I may be tripling down if there's such a thing.
They're good ideas.
I think to reiterate a bit, and it might sound overly optimistic, but I think one of the things that members and accountants and CPAs can do in general is to just be positive about how great the profession is. Nobody wants to hear. I don't want to hear it about how tough your busy season was. I know how tough it was. We know that, but there's no glory in trading those kind of stories, and it certainly doesn't appeal to people who are coming into the profession.
Right.
I mean, all that can really do is scare someone away. I just don't think there's any badge of honor to be earned from that. So, I mean, every job, of course, and every career has times that are tougher than others. But I see all too often that if there's anything we do amplify, we amplify the tough times versus the majority of the time where accounting is an amazing field to be in. I think also what members can do is to be active with so many things. You give. When you give, you get back more, tenfold. Arbitrary number there, but the reality is there are tons of places in the world, whether it's volunteering, being on boards, not always as a treasurer, hopefully, but the skills that CPAs have are in demand, and there are amazing opportunities to be active. And by being active, you actually will amplify the profession as well. And I think you tend to you receive something as well.
Right. And the more you're seen. And again, we'll just declare it now. You three have declared it officially, a moratorium on war stories or badge of honor stories. I'm going to throw in addition to the tax season one, we always say how hard the CPA exam was. I took each part 17 times in the snow and, uphill both ways.
Important point raised by all three CEOs and Dan Hood. CPAs need to share more success stories and fewer war stories. The profession has a lot of great stories to tell about how CPAs help individuals, businesses, even governments. Tell those stories, not how many times it took to pass the CPA exam or what deadline you have coming up. Next, Calvin, AJ, and Jeff discuss the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in bolstering the CPA pipeline.
I think it's hard to understate how important DEI should be. Ideally, that should be embedded in organizations, and it should be a natural thing that occurs. All too often, it's not, which is why I think it's so critical to make sure that we maintain and amplify DEI programs. Certainly, a number of years ago, there was just a few years ago, there seemed to be an amplification and more visibility, and it seems to have died off in some cases. And I don't think we can afford to let that happen. And it's too critical. And if I could just, you've got the three of us here, but we're all relatively new in our roles. For a long time, it was just one person who just retired, Ralph Albert Thomas, and the reality is we haven't seen the growth in the profession if you just come from a pure number standpoint than anyone would like. But that's not because there hasn't been effort, and it's not because there haven't been amazing programs. It's because I would think, and I would say, the challenge of DEI in the accounting profession is it's different. So the things that may work in some communities may very well be different in communities of color. Not worse, not better, but different.
We need to bring the relevancy of accounting to everyone, and accounting still remains the language of business. So if we want that strong pipeline, we have to create that awareness. From the very start with African American students, Latinx, you name it, we have to make that known that there is a path towards becoming, getting your degree, and then also becoming a CPA. Not to mention the opportunities to impact change within your community, and whether you're supporting clients and helping them, whatever that environment is, you can work in different industries. In accounting, I think we really have to share that story, but we also have to think about retention, right? And all of the strategies and opportunities to really bring forth the value of being a CPA, whether it's in public accounting or you go off into as a sole practitioner, it all matters. And one thing that I would say about DEI is that we haven't really moved the needle that much over the past 25 years, but I think that today it's really important that we look at ways to implement whatever we're talking about, we have to go beyond just having the conversations now, because really the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's now. If we don't step back and understand the value of inclusion, guess what? Our young people are telling us that they're looking for inclusive work environments. So all of that matters for the business case as well.
I think AJ and Calvin definitely pointed out some key areas of things that we can do. Through our Mary T. Washington Wiley program, we've identified a couple of things that need to happen structurally from within the profession to help them enable our growth in DEI. AJ mentioned that the environment isn't that diverse. When young people are coming to the field and they're one of a few, that makes it a little bit more challenging. I think each of us has probably walked into one of those rooms and, you're counting faces. Can you imagine doing that as part of your professional life every single day? The inclusivity piece of it is huge as well. And it goes beyond just race, ethnicity, gender. We're talking about young people that may not have gone to one of the top tier accounting schools, yet they're sitting next to someone who did. Those lived experiences are very different. And so we need to make sure that mindset pervades the entire organization so that people are aware of what that causes. Mentorship is huge. We need to make sure that those opportunities are available both within the firms, within the corporate finance teams, but then also on the external. I think those external mentors are the people that can help grease the skids a little bit, maybe help you talk through some of the sensitive issues that you might not maybe dealing with professionally. We've also found that, people from diverse backgrounds don't feel like they get timely, relevant, direct feedback on their performance. And that's often related to the fact that the person who's giving them the feedback may not have the cultural competencies to be able to do so. So they're apprehensive about being honest, direct, and respectful, which delays the development or could delay the development on some of those younger professionals from diverse backgrounds. And then, I talked a little bit about the education piece. So, we need to make sure that young people have the tools and the skills coming in so they don't get unfairly compared to their peers in those same classes that may not have the same backgrounds as they do. So those are just a couple of things that we need to address structurally within the profession to help enable some of our DEI work that's going to contribute to the pipeline issues.
Dan and Jeff mentioned the DE&I research that the Illinois Society released last year. It's called a CPA Diversity Report, Uncovering the Barriers to Success. If you haven't read it, you can check it out on Illinois' website, icpas.org. There's also a link in the show notes. Dan closed out the episode by asking each of the guests their top idea for moving the needle in terms of diversity in the profession.
I would probably pick sharing our story, sharing stories, positive stories about the profession, showing the impact that you can have, and the fact that you could be an inner city kid and you can have amazing impact in the profession, and you can work in any industry. I think that's something that I would do. I think that would really get the interest and the awareness of young people. So that's something that I would start out knowing that the trajectory might be, 10 to 15 years out between the time you speak to someone and they graduate. But if you get that level of excitement and passion, we can, I think, move the needle.
Yeah, I think we just need a little bit more to talk about representation within the profession. I think it's the less talked about dimension of the work that we're trying to do from a DEI perspective. We all talk about the number of scholarships that we're going, but we're not highlighting our best and brightest in the most effective fashion. There are so many individuals, partners, managing directors, all throughout the profession that we could be highlighting as examples of individuals from diverse backgrounds that have made it, they're thriving, they're making a difference. And just helping to tell those stories in a more effective fashion will really paint the picture for young people about, I can have a career in accounting and I can ultimately become a CPA regardless of my background. There's a managing partner from a Big Four firm here in Chicago who likes to say that your origin does not determine your destination. And I think the more that we highlight that for young people, I think it's going to make this a more attractive and relevant career field for them.
I think relevancy of the profession is one of, if not our biggest issues. So I too think that getting our stories out there more prominently at all levels is critical, because when you feel that the profession is relevant to you, whether you're entering the profession, already in the profession, hopefully not thinking about leaving the profession, but if it feels relevant to you, then you'll form a stronger connection. So along the same vein, really getting our stories out there much more effectively.
Excellent. All right, I get to vote too because I have been stealing ideas from you all throughout this podcast, all three of you. So my vote is going to be the flip side of that, getting the message out, which is a blanket ban on war stories and horror stories and how hard the CPA exam was and how hard we worked. That's my vote.
For more insights from AJ, tune into Issues Watch Live on December 20th or 28th. Register at njcpa.org/issueswatch. You can access the full on-the-air interview at accountingtoday.com/podcast. And for more information about the CPA Pipeline Challenge and steps being taken to address it, visit njcpa.org/CPA Pipeline. Lastly, NJCPA members can save 20% on a subscription to Accounting Today. Find out more at njcpa.org/marketplace.